having time. But at least we have a banner this time and some visuals, which is, I'm getting there. I'm slowly getting there. So I'm going to say hi and welcome to the Adversity Psychologist podcast. I'm Dr. Tara Quinterillo, and today I have returning guests. I love returning guests. I have Dr. Bella Smith back with me. Do you want to say hi and hello again to people who already know who you are, but maybe explain a little bit about who you are for our new listeners as well?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for having me back. So I'm Dr. Bella Smith, and I am an NHS GP partner in Suffolk. I've just been moaning about the hours I'm working, how much I'm doing at the moment. So that's my day job, and I have an interest in women's health. And so within my surgery, I do all the women's health, like the contraception, the coils, the implants, the menopause, etc. But I also have, I am also a co-founder of the Well HQ, which is an amazing company that we set up, all about education with Baz and Emma. And our goal is to educate those who train and coach women and women themselves at every life stage in order to keep them exercising, because girls leave exercise during puberty and women leave exercise during the menopause. And it's all for very often, reasons that we can definitely overcome. So we've written this book called The Female Body Bible, which is out on Amazon, and it's a Sunday Times bestseller. And we've just launched a load of courses to train coaches through puberty, pre and postnatal, menopause, and then the whole female body. So that's me.
Which is incredible. And for those people who might not be familiar with you, you've been on before, we've done an episode on menopause, but even then we were saying we need to do more. So I will put a link in the show notes to that episode as well. I should have looked it up before we recorded.
I should have listened to it, because I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to say the same thing again.
Well, we just kind of a basic let's talk about menopause, why it may go unnoticed, kind of just looking at myths around when it starts. Perimenopause, that was kind of what we were focusing on. But from that, and obviously because we follow each other and I've been following the work that you do, it's just made me realize that there's so much more that we could talk about, and obviously bring in a bit more in about what the Well do as well. And one of the things we really wanted to look at, because it's World Menopause Day, which is coming up, isn't it, in October?
Yes, which is also my wedding anniversary.
Is it? Oh, what a well-timed day. That means you won't be able to forget then. We want to kind of look at more on the, I guess it's more psychological bits, really, kind of how we embrace our bodies as we head towards or are in menopause and beyond. But there was something, we had a nice chat, didn't we, recently, just looking at the kind of guilt that goes around looking after yourself. So that's really what we want to look at today. And we should have recorded the conversation that we had a few weeks ago. I said it was really organic. It was fantastic, wasn't it? But why is it, do you think, that sometimes people struggle even thinking about what is my body going through? Why do I need to pay attention to it? And then actually putting some stuff in place. That's about a million questions in one, isn't it?
So I think the bottom line is our education on women's health is lacking at every life stage. So it's really hard for us to say, what's going on with ourselves if we've never been taught, we've never understood. The Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists did a survey back, I think it was 2019, and the answer to the survey was that women are woefully uneducated about their bodies at every life stage. And I was actually talking to my friend just this morning about this, about trying to talk to our doctors about puberty and what's going on in their periods and what to expect and what's normal and what's not. And we were like, gosh, it's hard, isn't it? Because even as women, we don't know enough. I mean, I think I do a bit more than she does because I'm a doctor, but it's stuff that you didn't know, that we were never taught. And so then if you think that menopause is 10 times worse than that, and the end of that spectrum, at the end of that fertile journey, if puberty is the start of it, menopause is the end. And so if you don't really understand what's going on at the beginning and the middle, then you're not really going to understand what's going on at the end. And it's just a journey, and it's a journey that every single female human being will go through. And therefore, it's obviously incredibly different. And this is one thing, if you ever take home anything from any podcast I do, it's the fact that we are all so unique. And so you can't say, really, this all happened to you now, this will happen to you then, and this treatment will help you. And if you ever listen to any of the amazing podcasts, like, say, by Tim Spector, who does the Zoe app, and he'll talk about the microbiome in your gut, and how we are so individualized, and that means that the way our hormones are, the way we respond to medication, the way we respond to food, like everything is so different. And it's really important to keep that all the time. Remember that. Why do we not put ourselves first, or why is it so difficult? I think it's societal, actually. I think that as women, we've been striving for equality, which we are still striving for, but in terms of jobs, we're doing jobs, but we're also still doing most of the other stuff. I know there are exceptions, but the child care, the looking after, running the household. I mean, I talk about, I work as a doctor, I work at the Well, but I also am a mum, and the school admin. Oh my God! Like
a whole episode on that, couldn't we?
A whole episode on school admin, and how kids can lose jumpers and shoes, and how they have netball matches on the other side of the country at 5:30 at night, and you have to sort something out, and gun shields and feeding them and all the stuff that goes with being a mum. And so I think the reality is that we have a very long list of things that we are constantly doing, and unfortunately, we always put ourselves at the bottom. And we have to change that. And I do actually believe that a lot of women get to midlife, get to the menopause, and go, this is a time I'm going to wipe the slate clean, and I'm going to redo things. Often it is when the children are older and leave, or they're at school or whatever, and you then have the capacity to. But I do think that it has to change. We do have to put ourselves first.
Absolutely. So I picked up on something you said then. So obviously there's maybe gaps in knowledge and how we seek that out, but then psychologically the gap with then how do we apply it and even make time and then consistently do it? Because I'm sure I'm like many people, you start things and how good are you at carrying it on, making it a real lifestyle change. And I guess it is so interesting, isn't it? The parent thing. I have 6 apps for both of my children at their school. That's a lot of apps to keep notifications, and so it's no wonder if that's kind of representative of most people, that how I have a secondary school age and a junior school age child, so different schools, different ethoses. It's a lot. So there's no wonder when you have work and deadlines, that things that don't have deadlines, like looking after ourselves, maybe, or metaphorical deadlines perhaps, move down the list. But how do we kind of move between that gap? We've identified that we need more knowledge, and it's great things like the podcast Female Body Bible. Go and buy that. I'll put the link for that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Because that's come out since the last episode that we did. But it's how we can kind of help people have a core shift, how we can help people get over that guilt of looking after ourselves.
The guilt I think so. If you think about in our lives, and certainly for me, I'm quite a task-driven person. So I do like my list, and I do like to tick them off, and I am aware of that.
Love a list.
I love a list, and sometimes I even
look at my list for this podcast.
I've even will write stuff on my list, even though I've done it, just so that I can tick it off to say.
Oh, absolutely! I think I've said that twice this week to people.
But I think in that case, you literally have to put yourself on that list. What am I going to do? And rather than thinking about, and this is my husband and I think this, rather than thinking to ourselves, am I going to exercise today? I think about, what exercise am I going to do today? So it's changing the way you think about things, and then putting it in, looking in your diary and going, right, I've got a capacity this evening, or I've got half an hour today. How do I feel? This is the type of exercise I'm going to do. We know that women stop exercising in midlife, 30%. So Women in Sport did this amazing survey in 2017.
That's high,
30%. And it's because of things like symptoms, but also the stigma that goes with it, and the lack of opportunity, but also the lack of motivation was a big factor. People just go, I haven't got the energy. And that's really important, because exercising and doing stuff for yourself, it helps your mental health massively, as you know, but it also really physically does, from the age of 35, our bones are getting weaker, our muscles are getting smaller from the age of 35. So you think about all that lovely estrogen that we produce in puberty, and our bones are laid down and really strong. As we sort of start going over 30, 35, 40, we're getting weaker. We have to lift weights, we have to be exercising, we have to be moving our body, and we need to reframe it. We have to, instead of thinking of it like this, I'm going to do this exercise because I want to look good, or I want to be a certain weight. No, it has to change. It has to be, I'm going to do this exercise because it makes me feel good. It makes me happy. It makes me confident. It makes me feel like I want to be with my friends. I look better. I have a natural hit of endorphins, and I come home feeling slightly high. Or vice versa. I'm going to do this yoga because I've had a really stressful day. My shoulders are up here, and I need to relax, or that kind of thing. And
look for those cues. Again, that individual thing. What we all need.
And the one thing about midlife, and we see this so often with active women, is many women are very active all the way through their lives, and they suddenly hit midlife and suddenly it doesn't work anymore. It's like you're doing your spin class, but you're gaining weight, or you're feeling tired, or you're getting injured. You're thinking, it's not quite working for me. And that is because in midlife, we have to wipe the slate clean. We have to change things, and we have to mix it up. So you can't just do the same thing again and again. You have to think about a bit of weights, a bit of strength, a bit of cardio. We know our cardiovascular risk goes up as we get older. We need to work our heart and our lungs and our blood vessels. We need to exercise, whether it's walking or running or dancing or disco or whatever you want to do. But it doesn't need to be every night, just maybe one day a week. And then the other night, do some yoga, calm down those stress levels, reduce your cortisol. And then another night, do mobility. And then another night, do some weightlifting. And then the other thing is, some of your exercise, some of your exercise is an escapism, I think. So I sometimes run to get away from people, and sometimes exercise is to be sociable. So sometimes I go to a class just so I can see my girlfriend, so we can go for a coffee afterwards. Mix it up, make it fun, find what works for you, and then you'll keep doing it. But in answer to your question, sorry, I've gone off on one, is to put
so many brilliant points though.
Put it in your diary, like you do. You almost need an app. Like your kids spawned, the netball match goes in. You put yours
Mum
in.
spawned. Yeah.
Mum spawned. Yes, there needs to
anyone
be an
listening
app
that wants to do that.
Yeah, Mum's doing an hour of whatever at 7 p.m. and no one's allowed to talk to her at that time.
With a big finger that wags and goes, "What have you done?"
Yeah, leave her alone. Let her do her thing. Exactly. Yes. So it's prioritizing, isn't it? Really,
it is. And we're having a kind of a giggle about the Spawn thing, but for those that aren't familiar, it's an app that just runs a lot of my life for me. It's fantastic. Tells me what I'm doing, what I shouldn't be doing. Literally, click here.
Sports, isn't it? Like netball, rugby,
it's fantastic,
cricket,
and if you have multiple children that need to be multiple places, it's just fabulous. We've done a great shout out for them. There's so much there that I want to pick up on, because you said before, obviously as we go into menopause, and you probably, if you listen to the playback of the episode before that we did, you can hear me going, oh, really? Oh my goodness. I'm so ignorant of so many areas. And I thought I was fairly clued up. So that really got me thinking about how I talk about that with my friends as well. That there is uncertainty, particularly as we're thinking about going into the menopause, and again, differences. And sometimes uncertainty, psychology can create anxiety or fear, and then we might avoid, or maybe I won't think about that yet, or maybe I won't think about changing my routine, because sometimes change is hard if we're uncertain or anxious, but also change is hard if we're already in a routine, and maybe some of us have issues with motivation and task initiation. But it's so important. The main thing I wanted to pick up on what you said there is, so many of my friends will say, I exercise and I'm putting on weight and my body's changing, and then that's impacting how they feel, their self-esteem. And we talked about this in our informal chat, and I think that's something people really need to take away today. That why is it then, if it is answerable in a podcast, what kind of changes, and why is it that the spin class you may have done isn't working anymore? Why is it that our bodies may be responding differently to the exercise we usually do?
So the menopause is when your ovaries gradually shut down, they stop ovulating, stop releasing eggs, and your hormone levels drop. So you have estrogen and progesterone, and the perimenopause is when it's kind of really imbalanced and higgledy-piggledy. And not everyone has a natural menopause. Not everyone has a perimenopause. Some women will have a surgical or a medical menopause, where they're kind of abruptly put into the menopause. And as the estrogen that we know and love, the one that really is great for us women, is something called estradiol. And as that goes down, the body starts to slightly panic and goes, oh my God, I need more estrogen. I need to make more estrogen for, the serotonin and for all the things and all the functioning that it needs to do. So it lays down fat cells often abdominal fat cells, which are producing another type of estrogen called estrone, which is slightly more male type of estrogen, which isn't as nice or as healthy, which is why we no longer have the protection from the cardiovascular risk factors, and we don't have so much protection for the bones. But all it does is lay down fat cells. And so really what you're trying to do in your midlife is listen to your body and try and produce as much of the natural good estradiol as you can.
Right.
So by doing and not allowing your body to put down fat cells. So believe it or not, physiologically it's a very stressful time for women, the menopause, and your cortisol level will go up. And so actually stress is something that will kind of make your menopausal symptoms worse, and cortisol
so important to say
actually compete. So bottom line is you want to be causing yourself as least stress as possible in order to manage your hormones best. And actually a really good example of this was in lockdown, when women were put into a pressure cooker environment of working and caring for children, and a lot of women started having early menopausal symptoms. Their periods started becoming more irregular, and they were getting hot flushes and night sweats, and they may have been like 30s and 40s. And then as soon as it was lockdown was released, their hormone health got better because the stress levels went down, and they were back to being a lot more kind of normal cycle. So really it's a case of just don't just keep flogging yourself with the same exercise. Really look at your diet, really look at your lifestyle, look at your stress levels. I mean, it's so easy, isn't it, for me to say don't be stressed, but we all have stress. We all are stressed, but it's how you
manage. And as parents,
it's how you manage the stress. And then cut out the stuff that makes your estrogen levels drop. So, cut out the caffeine and the alcohol, and do the exercise. And then also a little bit of natural, I know I've got my
coffee cup.
My bottle of wine is chilling in the fridge. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. But,
I'll move it over
have
there.
Some phytoestrogens, like soy, and we know that women in Eastern countries have less menopausal symptoms than Western countries because of the amount of soy they eat in their diet, certainly in Japan and China. You know what I mean? It's just, I think the temptation is to keep just flogging yourself, and actually it's a time to stop and listen and rethink.
So there might be people.
And the other big thing is HRT.
Yes, which we do need to do a whole episode on as well, I feel, because that's something I am so ignorant of. There's a lot
HRT is basically estradiol, and you're giving it back.
So I've learned, again, just open mouth going, oh, right, okay. Just thinking back to the pandemic and some of the moments I had trying to homeschool and live lessons that didn't fit with my clinic times, and just not perhaps being the best version of myself in how I responded to that at times. But there might be people listening. And so obviously I am really aware this is quite female focused, isn't it? Obviously in terms of the menopause. But there may be women listening then who go, that's me. I've managed to, and I'm thinking how we meet the parental demands here with how do I create change in looking after myself? Quite a lot of people may have managed to carve out time with their schedules, with partners being home, to go to these classes. And it might be really daunting to then go, I need to, and how do I relook at this? Does that make sense? The kind of how do I step out of the treadmill that I'm on? Because at least I'm exercising. But actually, I think the biggest lesson today is that how can you carve maybe just a little bit of time to almost, I guess the psychologist would say, reformulate. So what am I doing? What exercise am I doing? What am I eating? And it's just, so even if you could just carve out an hour, and I'm such a big fan of Soul Fashion, if people looking on camera, I love pens and papers. Just getting a pen and a paper. What am I doing? When am I exercising? What's working? What isn't? What, and maybe where are the gaps in my knowledge then? So let's bring it back to what you said at the beginning. And what's working for me and what isn't?
And what isn't. And also, what am I eating and when am I eating? And
the when bit,
looking at the kind of the processed foods, the sugar, the kind of the good intentions, perhaps first thing in the morning or during the week, and then all the wheels come off at the weekend. The selective memory of food. So I don't know.
Good point.
You grab a piece of toast with chocolate spread on without realizing it, not even thinking or acknowledging it, or do you just
we're not that mindful in what we're eating, especially if it's all right to say. I know we're focusing quite a lot on parents as well, but I do think it's quite important, you know, when you're on the go, quite often you're doing lunch boxes and how are we going to eat before this netball match or basketball match, and sometimes you aren't that mindful with what you're eating, or the situation doesn't really dictate time to be mindful. I've just got to grab something, and it might be, as you say, those kind of fast foods or, you know, sugary carbohydrates.
And actually, the more you can be organized and prepared, the better. And that's hard because we're all so busy. But actually, you know, again, if you can prioritize it and say, right, this is what we're eating, I'm going to bulk cook or bulk it, you know, I'm going to find a way. And the other thing is portion size. I think, you know, as we get older, I think, so I've recently had an injury. It's probably one of the most painful things I've ever done. I've herniated a disc in my neck, C6.
Gosh.
And it's all the way down my arm, and it made my fingers numb. And it's really made me, and I love my exercise and I love lifting weights, but it's made me stop. Like I haven't been able to exercise really properly for about 5 weeks. But what I've realized is that actually I don't need to eat as much. And actually I've sort of thought, actually, was I eating so I could eat more? I mean, sorry, was I exercising? You know what I mean? So sometimes you just have,
good point.
Sometimes it's an external reason, makes you stop and reassess. And so sometimes it's good to go, right, actually, I am going to go back to exercise, but I'm not going to do as much, or I'm not going to make it as stressful. I'm not going to lift as heavy. I'm going to do a bit of this, a bit of that. I'm going to eat a bit less of that. And I'm going to make sure you know, that kind of thing. It's just thinking about yourself and going.
And that's really manageable, isn't it? It's not about cutting things out. I think if I look at my 20s and early 30s, all the diets, you know, the South Beach diet was really popular, wasn't it? Dreadful, just cutting out carbs basically. But you know, and when your body's different then, and maybe we weren't as informed then, social media wasn't as big a thing, but actually some of this stuff isn't about restricting, is it? It's not saying I must withhold these things, because actually we know human motivation, people don't tend to do very well on diets that really restrict, but it's just about looking at your relationship, I guess, with food and exercise, and the relationship between those two things.
Absolutely.
And that's doable, I guess, from a psychology point of view. So I always say with this podcast, what I really like is kind of practical things that people are listening to go, what could I do after listening to this? Is you know, getting that bit of paper, then looking maybe a little list of what things cause me stress, and then looking at
one really important tip for us women as we get older is to make sure we're having enough protein. So we are, as I sort of mentioned, our bones are getting slightly less strong, and our muscles are getting slightly smaller, and that's why lifting weights is important. But you need to have enough protein to fuel the muscles and in every part, your heart, your bowel, everywhere. And I think sometimes women aren't as good at eating protein as, say, men are. And looking at, you know, if you are hungry, because we know that having protein will sort of stop, you'll get satiety, you'll stop eating quicker than if you say have a bowl of cereal. I mean, I don't know about you, I've never stopped eating. I could literally eat it. You don't feel full after cereal.
There's no off switch.
It's just carbs, isn't it? So actually having I don't know, some, like a piece of cheese or some yogurt or a boiled egg, or
for some that's heaven, permission to go eat cheese. But mindfully,
and not, I mean, you know, obviously not eating the whole block, but you know, being allowed to say, look, I'm hungry and I need, with my lunch I'm going to have some chicken because a salad on its own is no good, or whatever it is, you know. So my daughter started making herself scrambled egg, and she'll have scrambled egg like most mornings, and I love that because that's pure protein, that's for her growth, and it's the same for us in our midlife.
Absolutely, because again, it's just that relationship. You said that because I am in a household full of boys. They eat so much meat and cheese, and I'm usually the one that's not really my thing, but kind of redefining. And I started a kind of a well-known course lately, let's just say, I don't know if we're allowed to name it, and it has completely redefined my relationship with my body, but also it gives you advice on what you're eating, and it's made me prioritize, because it's made me realize now I've really stuck and gone beyond the pulling out stage that usually for me after a few weeks, you know, and I'm just about to move to the advanced stage of this program, and it really has. And I don't mind plugging it a little bit, because for me it's not about, you know, being a certain size. This is about a real lifestyle change, you know, prioritizing. And as you say, it's that looking, where am I going to do that today, rather than can I? and fitting it in. But it's made me think about, oh, they're eating all this protein, maybe I should. And
the other thing
is okay.
Is you don't have to eat loads of meat. So I've started, if you have like a can of kidney beans and you take half a can of kidney beans, and that has the same amount, if not, more iron in it than a steak does.
Really?
And so for women who have perimenopausal symptoms, heavy periods, can get a bit anemic, especially if you're exercising, having something like kidney beans in a wrap or with some hummus and, I don't know, some lettuce, whatever, that could be really good protein, really probably quite cheap because it's only a quid or something for
which in a cost of living crisis is important as well.
And really good iron levels. And so stuff like that is having stuff in your cupboard that you can just eat, that that are gonna fill you up, do you good, and doesn't cost you the earth. I think that instead of having a packet of biscuits, which I think is work of the devil.
It's that
blood sugar and
the quick fix that we know, and almost the kind of, I deserve this, and trying to just deal with the psychology of it as well. I sometimes work with women who have kind of secret eating problems, so kind of binge eating at night, and quite a lot of that work is around kind of addressing this is my time where the world doesn't need me. It's usually after everyone's in bed when we look at the kind of formulation, and it is really interesting. But then what happens is that cycle of kind of guilt and shame and it not being great for your body or your mind, and the relationship between those two things. I'm off to buy some kidney beans after this. I learn so much every time I talk to you. That's, I do like a bit of meat, but I'm not a massive meat person. But I think there's so much there, isn't there, around, I really wanted to bring in today that kind of why we need to look after ourselves, and especially different times of life, but also where the information and the knowledge comes in. And I do think there will be so many people that listen that go, that's me, I'm exercising, the scales go up. I see people in group chats all the time talking about, oh, I'm doing all this exercise, what's the point? And people get deflated. But this knowledge, so I say, buying the Female Body Bible, just reading through that book will just equip you. But I also think, is it worth kind of saying to people, just from a psychological point of view, that this kind of change may take just a little bit of time. It's not a quick fix thing. It's about a kind of a core shift. And so get the knowledge, see how that applies to you. Revise your exercise schedule and your relationship with exercise, your relationship with food. Maybe treat it as a kind of a little plan to do, rather than this weekend I will. And I don't know what your thoughts are on kind of the best way forward for people.
So I think once again, it's an individualized approach. We're all unique. We're not the same. And it's
like
the same
our individual bodies.
It's the same when we're talking to younger women who are tracking their cycle, and we encourage them to track their cycle and when their periods are and how they feel and the symptoms, and not just the period symptoms, but their bowel symptoms, when they get diarrhea, when they get moody, when they feel, this is really empowering stuff. And it can really enable people to understand and thrive, because they then can anticipate when they're going to feel rubbish and when they're going to feel good. And that can be, when we speak to athletes at the Well, we're sort of saying to them, you can't change your cycle and do the Olympic final at the same time of your cycle every, wherever your cycle is, that's where it is going to be. And all we're going to teach you is give you tools for your toolkit to use to manage the symptoms so that you can perform at your best, because there's evidence that says there's no difference in performance. It's how you feel because of the symptoms. And so if you can overcome the symptoms, you can actually perform at your best on every day, regardless of where you are.
That's really interesting.
And the perimenopause is that, but it's extreme and it's unpredictable. So, but you can still track your cycle and you can still learn about it and understand it so that it empowers you. Now, if you find that you start changing these things up and you go on you start doing a class and it doesn't feel right, so what happens in sport, in exercise, is often it will throw up other issues because of the nature of it. And those issues can be ignored or they can be dealt with. So often what will happen is that you might say, right, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to do a park run on a Saturday. Happy days. I really want to do it. You start doing it and you start leaking urine and you think, oh my God, there's no lose here. I'm leaking urine. Oh my God. And then women try and cope. So they stop drinking water, they have to go for multiple wees, they wear black, they then ultimately don't carry on exercising. And this is outrageous because the pelvic floor is something that should be working strong, that we should be nurturing, because we need it from birth till death to keep us continent, independent. And so it's like, well, okay, so you go to the park run, you realise that actually your pelvic floor is a bit weak. So then you go and see a women's physio, or you come and see your GP and you get the help. Vaginal estrogen is really good because that strengthens your pelvic floor with the low dose of estrogen topically. And then you can deal with that, and then you can decide, rather than saying, no, running's not for me. It's like, we have to navigate this life stage. And rather than shying away from it, we need to overcome the barriers and the problems until we can continue to exercise.
And that it's okay to do that. Because I wonder how many people think, oh, I shouldn't go to my GP with that, or is it something that needs...
And if one person is thinking that, 100 people are thinking that. Like, I see, the trouble is that I see so many women, I hear this so often, if only you knew how common it was. Like, it's like, and for some reason in this country, it's only really given permission after having a baby. That's the only time when you can go, oh, I can't go on the trampoline because I just had a baby. Whereas we know that young women who are sporty leak urine. We know that the pelvic floor has never been on any curriculum until now it is. And we do lots in schools educating girls. And actually, a lot of them faint when we talk about it because they find it so intimate and so kind of like, oh my God, like, because it's such, but actually they will never forget it. And that will stay with them all the way through. And what the ultimate goal is to avoid a prolapse or a weakness later on when you're older.
That's the good old kind of preventative model. And how many of those girls might then feel able to maybe have a conversation or direct someone else to go talk to their GP or their parents or whatever about it as well. I think that's so important. Just empowering people.
This is the conversation that shouldn't be restricted to your doctors. I mean, the Train Like a Woman webinar, I'd love you to go back and watch it, Tara, because
that's my tonight's job. Yes.
Yeah, because that's what I talk about. I only have a tiny bit in the webinar, but all I talk about is that you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a doctor to talk about this stuff. Even as a male coach of young girls, there should be the ability for duty of care to make sure that these girls have a process of communication for any of these sorts of problems, whether it be periods or breast pain when they're exercising or pelvic floor issues. They shouldn't and mustn't go ignored.
That's a really good point, actually. So kind of aside, I know we've kind of focused maybe on kind of predominantly talking about menopause and aiming that at women, but actually, the partners, the coaches, the other people in our lives who may be supporting women through whatever stage of their lifespan, just having conversations then, educating yourselves, I guess, in order to maybe begin to have those conversations. How to have that. As the Brits, we're terrible at tricky and icky conversations, the whole like anxious, let's avoid. And when I was at secondary school, the Tampax lady came and it was all almost like just quick hand out some stuff and this will happen to you and off you go, and it was all terribly cringy and let's just get that out of the way, and everyone having a bit of a giggle at the back of the class. And I'm really glad that times have changed and things have become aggressive.
We talk very much about the knowing doing gap. So we know that a lot of men, I think it's something like 70% of coaches are men. So whether they like it or not, if they're coaching women, they will need to know this, this stuff. They have to be having these conversations. But what we're finding is a lot of them are learning about the menstrual cycle, learning about how to train women pre and postnatally or through puberty or even the menopause. And they know all this information. But then what do they do with the information? That's the gap, the bit. It goes, how do I now go up to a 12-year-old girl and go, are you having breast pain when you exercise? You just can't. There's a real knowing doing gap. And that's what we're about, is it's equipping them with the tools and the language to make it not creepy or weird, but actually really helpful, or signposting, or using other words like kit. A sports bra should be seen as vital kit for all women. We know it improves performance by 4% if you wear the right sports bra. There is amazing statistics, an amazing thing. If you want me to tell you about it in a minute, I will. You'll hear it on the Train Like a Woman webinar. But if you then rebrand it as, this is not about women's icky health or breasts. This is about it. Suddenly it's like, well, have you got your box on for cricket? Yes. Have you got your gum shield for rugby? Yeah. Have you got your sports bra for running? Yeah. Done.
Yeah. We don't have icky, or I've got so many gum shields on the washing up rack all the time in this house because I'm a mum of boys, and that's never icky, is it, to talk about? No. It's your kit, and that's what you need.
A cricket box,
Yes, absolutely.
Right where you don't want to know where it goes, but it's just, you have to have one, and it's like you wouldn't send them on the cricket pitch without it. So it's the same with court short kits. If you have a team of girls, you need to have a shed loads of pads, period pants, tampons, etc., available for all of them, because they will all get caught short at some point, because we all do, because our hormones are never clockwork. And don't put them in a bag and put them away and don't tell anyone, because no one's going to come up to you and go, can I have a tampon, please? They're not. You need to leave them out, or have a big, or say to them, girls, if you need any tampons, they're there. Done. It's got to
reducing that kind of stigma or even shame attached to
it's like,
having that situation, asking.
And we talk about the fact that having a period as an active woman is a sign of health. So if you don't have a period, then that's when we should be worried. So having a regular period is a given, is a healthy thing to have. We know you're eating enough, we know you're fueling enough.
Thinking of it,
And so therefore, it's a given that all of these girls are going to need tampons or pads or period products or whatever. So just make them available.
And because we spoke last time, if people listen back onto the last podcast, we were just talking about, in my local GP surgery now, they have the little kits in the bathroom, which I love. And I'm starting to see that in more and more places. And I know that's something you've been involved in locally as well. But again, for everyone, so as you go perimenopause, menopause, going to be caught out in exactly the same way.
Especially perimenopause.
Yes,
it's so unpredictable, and I guarantee it will be a super period, which is really, 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 really heavy, unexpected, just when you really don't want it and you got your white jeans on.
Which everyone at the moment is saying, please wear in autumn, because that's the new fashion, and let's not restrict them just to summer. And I'm thinking as well then, so the psychologist in me is going, actually, how many women might avoid doing really value-based living because I don't want to risk? What if that happens? That actually, if we're normalizing conversations, having better access to things, what does that mean for us being able to engage in things and go and do stuff and not kind of be dominated by the fear or the anxiety of things happening? I'm sure we've all had times where that's happened.
So thankfully, there's a lot more women inventing things for women nowadays. It's starting to happen. So things like when you express milk when you're breastfeeding. When I was breastfeeding 12 years ago, it was like a massive palaver, like a machine you wheeled in. It went dun 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 like that. Now I watch people on Instagram and they go ding ding boom boom ding ding boom boom, and they carry on doing whatever they're doing or working, and it's again going and it's doing it, and it's like amazing, absolutely.
It is absolutely amazing.
And it's the same with period products have come on leaps and bounds. So now you can have a period swimming costume that looks like any other swimming costume. And it just has a tiny bit of a pad built into the gusset of it that will hold up to 12 hours of blood. And so you can still wear your swimming costume any time, but if your period comes on, you're covered.
Yeah.
It's the same with pants.
What can that mean for people as well?
Same with pants. You can wear just a normal pair of pants, but it just has a little tiny extra thickness so that you are never caught short. And that's psychologically
life-changing,
especially if it's something that's so unpredictable and has caught you out a few times. You'll start changing your behavior to compensate, and that could be really negative for many.
Absolutely. I do scuba diving. It's one of my little things. Don't get to do it as often as I like, but when I do, but sometimes as a woman, you can be on the boat in the middle of freaking nowhere with no toilet quite often, because you're just expected to do that in the water. And sometimes it puts people off. And I've spoken to women who go, I won't do day dives where you go off for several hours because I might get caught short. So some of those new products now are, and that's one small area of when women enjoying and experiencing and having issues that men don't have to think about.
Well, it's like women cricketers. Women sailors, and in the Olympics, the sailors would go off for like 6-7 hours. How do you change your tampon in that time? Or or you're on a dinghy, or cricketers meant to wear white. I know things are changing. Wearing white, they don't have a lunch break for 4 hours. And what if they're super heavy? How are you psychologically meant to be focusing on your sport and performing at your best, when all you can think about is whether 5 million people can see your blood on the back of the trousers. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
It's
and again, what might that lead to in terms of avoidance? So as well as the kind of impact on performance, some people might not even get there. Every day people might go, actually, I'm going to avoid. I don't know how it works if you're, an Olympian, whether you actually do get to the point where you ever avoid, but actually that could get in the way of you sticking with a career, sticking with a particular sport. And again, I'm just thinking, how many people might be listening to this now going, I don't even know what products are out there. Unless you're scrolling through Instagram, seeing adverts here and there, that's not really spoken about. I don't really speak about it with your friends. There's still so much taboo, I think, about talking about this, which is why I love having you on, because it's quite organic conversation when we talk. And I just think as well, that just takes a barrier down, doesn't it? So if there's women, men, and you go.
Well, I was going to say it does. And it's really interesting you say that, because I've been talking about this with Baz and Emma and all of our team for 3 years. I think everybody knows about it. When I talk about period products and things, I just think, oh yeah, this is old news. But you're right. I still tell patients and say, what about this period pants or a menstrual cup? I don't know if you've heard of menstrual cups. I mean, again, the young who are growing up are very aware of the environment of our planet, quite rightly, I say. But they don't want to be using tampons or pads that they can't recycle. And so something like a menstrual cup that you insert, it collects, you can stay in for 12 hours, it collects blood, you wash it, you start again. I mean, amazing. All a woman needs, though, is the facilities in order to do that. So you need a toilet, you need to be able to wash, and that's where I feel society is still behind, when they're building things and there isn't enough, or they're combined loos, and it's like, how are you going to wash a menstrual cup with a boy standing next to you? That's the only thing I think that no one's thinking about.
The kind of next step. Maybe there's someone who designs washrooms who's listened to this podcast and is going to go, actually, do you know what? I'm going to think about that. You never know. You never know who's listening on the train or wherever. But as you say, I think environmental concerns have also led to people thinking about different products in terms of period pants as well, that they're much better for the environment as well. But also, if that was the initial thinking, the adverts and things will also appeal to people who think actually the product itself is really useful to have. And as you say, and they're much more accessible these days. I know when there was only a couple of brands around, they were super expensive, because I used to see adverts and think, oh, is that accessible to everybody? But Marks and Spencer's do them now. There's so many different variations, and you can try and see what works for you. But it's quite life-changing. So I'm thinking people listening then, who might go, right, we have covered so much today. It's brilliant. World Menopause Day is coming up. So if those people who are listening to this, we're going to try and get it out just before, aren't we? But obviously, if you're listening to it in future times, this is every October. Is it the 10th or the 11th?
18th.
18th. I don't know why I had 10th. I think 10th I know. I will edit this bit out. I had 10th out because that's the week before for us to get this podcast out. So
it's the 18th, my wedding anniversary. So I don't forget it.
Are you in the Well HQ? Are you doing anything around World Menopause Day, or in the work that you do as a digital GP?
Yes, I am. I'm in the City of London doing a presentation in a law firm on, I think, the day after, the actual day of the World Menopause Day. I've actually got my appraisal, my GP appraisal. So nothing, but it's an amazing day, because if you are on social media, it will be full of amazing things that so many women will be doing. And I say women, probably maybe men as well, men and women, but it's a really, I just think 5 years ago, this didn't exist, didn't happen. Or if it did, we didn't talk about it. And I remember 5-6 years ago going to my local radio station and saying, can I talk about the menopause? And they were like, no one wants to know about that. That's really embarrassing. And now it's like, we have a day, we can celebrate, and it's getting out there. It's definitely changing the lives of many women, for sure. And the number of women that now come to me wanting, I think Davina has done a lot. I think a lot of these documentaries, Dr. Louise Newton, they've done a lot for kind of raising awareness. And I think that has made, because a lot of women now, they'll come to see me not with so much knowledge. They are so well informed, and they know what they want, and they know what they don't want, and they know the risks. And all it is a case of saying, well, what should we do? Should we do this, or do you want to do that, or do you want to try this? And that makes my job so much easier.
I was just going to say that. How is it from your end then, that you're making people having, informed choice, we'd call that, wouldn't we? You're weighing up the information.
And I used to have to spend a lot of time kind of explaining and saying, this is what it is, and this is what HRT is, and these are the risks. And they were very hard. And back then it was very hard to convince people, because they're like, no, it's too risky. But now, because there's been so much education, people realize it is actually, for the majority of women, obviously not everyone, it is low risk, and it is got lots of benefits, and it is easy to take. And when there isn't a supply issue, which we've had at the moment, but
which there may still be in years to come if people listen to this.
That's it. But and
accessibility and knowledge is power as well.
Knowledge is power, and then they have a choice, and that's all we want in life, is to know and to have a choice.
So from scrolling through Instagram and learning, menopause, as you say, and there may be things in the lead up, that's all knowledge, you say, from coaches to young girls and everybody in between. But also, if you want more targeted knowledge, go buy a Female Body Bible, follow the Well HQ as well as your digital GP work. But the biggest thing that's come from me today is just carving out some time. Even if you just go, I need to do that, that's the first step. Carving out time for yourself to look at what you're eating, how you exercise, what's working, what is not, and how you are going to, not if and when, but how are you going to put that in. Get your diary out, get that in. Follow you guys, because I think some people could really benefit from learning a bit more about what exercise works and what doesn't, and their individual needs, and just giving yourself permission, I guess, to do that it's okay to look after ourselves. And what might that mean for our families and our significant others, our jobs, if we are maybe taking that time to look after ourselves. It's not just about our own well-being. Actually, it might mean that we're able to give in a different way. I know certainly my journey over the last kind of 4 or 5 months, actually, it's had a real impact on all areas of my life. So where can people find you? So if people don't know already, obviously I'll put all of this in the show notes. Where can they find you? Where can they find the Well HQ as well?
So the Well HQ is the website is thewellhq.com, I think, maybe thewell-hq.com. But
I'll put it all in the notes, so people can just click straight away.
We're on social media. We on Instagram and on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and you can find me. I'm the digital GP. And we are just, as I say, we've just launched these courses, and there is a menopause course available for people if they wanted to sign up. What you were just saying, Tara, it's like we all just want to live. Have you got a dog? Is that your dog? Oh.
Yes, he always, at the end of every podcast I record, the Amazon man will arrive, or the postman.
I love that.
He's in most podcasts if you listen carefully enough.
I love that.
Just one of them. The other one's much better behaved. It's just one particular one.
So I was just going to say, it's like we just want to live the best version of ourselves and live our best lives.
Absolutely.
And I think in order to do that, it's just taking time to look at what we're doing, what we're putting in, how we're looking after ourselves, and look after ourselves like we would our best friend. Show some compassion. Like, if your friend was working as hard as you are and neglecting herself as much as would you say you need to take some time for yourself? Be kind like you would to a friend.
Absolutely. I use that quite a lot in my work, the compassionate friend kind of metaphor. How would you treat somebody else, and what would you say to them? How can people take away from today, then how can people start to have a compassionate conversation with themselves? So I always ask every guest, and I've never done this before, if you had one little nugget, one adversity takeaway, what might it be?
I would say, up until my neck injury, I would have said lift weights. Definitely lift weights, which I still think. But I would say now, really manage your stress. Find a way of stress management. And it's often the elephant in the room, but really try and find a way of managing your stress.
A really important point, and learning about the role of stress and our health for all those people talk about the muffin top, where that suddenly appears from, and the role of stress. Thank you so much for coming back on, Ben. It's been amazing. Always enjoy chatting to you. I know we'll definitely do more. And hopefully people today, get that pen out, everybody. Start thinking about yourself. Take some time. Get a cup of tea, sit down with your pen and paper and relook get your diary out and make time to exercise. And I think I said last time my equivalent of lifting weights is just trying to lift my dog up, but I have now started incorporating weight work into what I do since whenever we spoke. I think it was last autumn, wasn't it? So yeah, we can do it. Amazing. We can all do it. We can make time.
Awesome.
Lovely to have you on. Take